Okay, so past 41 is about agriculture class. This is a very short standard. We're given with very little provisions lang to study class. By the way, I just remembered, it's good if you remember the titles of the standards class. For example, PAS 38, intangible assets, PFRS 5, non-current assets held for sale and discontinued operations. Because it has happened before class that that one examiner asked a question asking what was the title of PAS 41, and the choices were agriculture, biological assets, so on and so forth. And many answered incorrectly, class, because the first thing that normally comes to the mind of students when talking about PAS 41 is biological assets class. Whereas the correct title for PAS 41 class is actually agriculture. Although I'm not personally a fan of those kind of questions class, but it actually happened before, so perhaps it could also come out during your final departmental examination. Okay, so please at least be familiar with the title of the standards. Now, obviously, PAS 41 is about agricultural activity class. Okay, and this is also another choice that could be given. Okay, that the title of PAS 41 is agricultural activity. Okay, but again, the title is only agriculture class. Okay, so PAS 41 deals with the accounting treatment and disclosures required for agricultural activity. And as to the scope class, it tells us that the standard should be applied when they relate to agricultural activity class, meaning when we are dealing with biological assets, when we are dealing with agricultural produce, and we are dealing with government grants. Okay, but the standard also provides us with exemptions, and I hope you would understand why these items that are being excluded from the scope of PAS 41 are excluded. Okay, so when we talk about biological assets class, this would normally be your plants, your animals. Okay, but the standard expressly excludes bearer plants class. And uh, I believe bearer plants is also defined in PAS 16, but it is also defined in this standard. The primary reason class is that bearer plants is to be governed by PAS 16. Okay, when we are accounting for bearer plants class, we are not concerned about its biological transformation. When we are dealing with bearer plants, we do not really care as to how long it grows, as to how thick as to how thick the trunk would be, because our primary concern for bearer plants is its ability to produce fruits. Okay, so we are not concerned with the growth, the biological transformation of your bearer plants. And since the primary purpose of your bearer plants is just to provide you with fruits class, it partakes the same function as your property, plant, and equipment. So very important theory class. Bearer plants are considered as property, plant, and equipment and not biological assets. It would be very understandable if for a student who did not read anything to come up with a conclusion that bearer plants, being a plant, will be part of your biological assets and thus covered by PAS 41. But that's wrong. Because as to the use of your bearer plants class, it does not relate to agricultural activity. Okay, that is why your bearer plants is not covered by PAS 41. It is treated as a property, plant, and equipment. Agricultural produce class at the point of harvest, it emphasizes that it should be at the point of harvest because once it is harvested class, it will now be governed by your inventories. For example, you have fruits class that are still hanging. The moment that they are harvested, they will no longer be governed or covered by PAS 41. They will already be considered as inventories and thus covered by PAS 2. Third class, government grants in relation to biological assets. Okay, but if you when we go later on to paragraph 34 and 35 class, the provisions there concerning government grants in relation to biological assets class conform to the rules provided in PAS 20. PAS 20 is the standard that applies to government grants in general class. So there's really no need to specifically exclude or uh, provide for a separate provision for government grants for biological assets because the rules there conform to the rules provided in PAS 20. Okay, in paragraph 2 here, class, we're given with items that are not governed by PAS 41 and they are excluded from the scope of PAS 41, understandably so, because they pertain to a transaction that is specifically governed by another standard. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the PAS 41 is applied to agricultural produce class, which pertains to the products that would be harvested from a biological asset, but only at the point of harvest. Okay, after the harvest class, it will now be PAS 2 that will apply. That is, if the fruits are to be used in production or held primarily for sale. Now, moving on to paragraph 4 class. Again, I'm not a fan of these kind of questions class, but these kind of questions come out not just in our school but even from authors class that have been around for more than 10 or 15 years class. Even as a student, I did not understand why would an author expect me to know that a I cannot remember the question anymore class, but my issue with one author was that why would he expect me to know that the yarn is a product that comes up that is sourced out from a sheep. Why am I expected to know that? I really cannot remember the specific question. I wasn't able to get class. But after reading the standard class, I've learned that the reason that that question would be deemed acceptable class was because these information are contained in the standard. So because this information is contained in the standard class, you're expected to know that a carcass class would be the agricultural produce of a pig, okay, depending also on the choices class, and uh, products after processing would pertain to sausages, cured ham, so on and so forth. Because these are contained expressly in the standard class, you're expected to have an idea as to how this works. Okay, the tea bushes would be your biological asset, the leaves would be the agricultural produce, and the tea itself would be the after processed product. Okay, so please be familiar with these items because you could be asked to connect or to relate the after processing products with the agricultural produce and the related biological assets. Okay, so it's a matter of being familiar, class. Okay. Now, so the definitions class, considering that PAS 41 is very short class, a lot of questions on PAS 41 would come from the definition of terms. Okay. So please be familiar with agricultural activity class. It is the management by an entity of the biological transformation and harvest of biological assets for sale or for conversion into agricultural produce or into additional biological assets. Agricultural produce are those harvested produce of the entity's biological assets. Now here we're again given the definition of a bearer plant class. A bearer plant is used in production or supply of agricultural produce, is expected to bear produce for more than one period, has a remote likelihood of being sold as an agricultural produce, except for incidental scrap sales. And from this definition alone, class, we can say that this would fall under PPE because it is going to be used in production or supply of goods. Of course, a biological asset class would either be a living animal or a plant. Okay, but please understand this that there is no such thing as bare animal class because for animals class the sale of the animal itself as a biological asset and not just as a producer of agricultural produce class will have value class. For example, for chicken class, even if you raise chicken for the purpose of having eggs class, by the time you would stop using the chicken to lay eggs class, you would be able to sell it as a product itself. Okay, you will always have a market for chicken meat class. So, and the same goes for all other farm animals class. Okay, so that's why we will not have a bear animal as far as the concept of bear plant is concerned. But please understand, class, it is a plant, but because of the use of such plant, it is a tree, but because of the use of such tree, it would be classified as a PPE. Okay. Same possibility is also available for our animals class. What do I mean? We have an animal, but it is not to be classified as a biological asset, but instead it is going to be classified as a property, plant, and equipment. And that would confuse a lot of students class. How can an animal be classified as a property, plant, and equipment? You go back to the purpose of property, plant, and equipment class. These are properties, long-lived assets, the purpose of which is to be used in production or in the supply of goods or services. So it's possible, class, that the services that you provide to your customers, the services that your business provide, involve the mere use of animals without regard as to the biological transformation of your animals class. Example, zoo class. This is almost always the question that will be given. Okay, how do you classify zoo animals class? Okay, and especially when given a choice of biological assets, many students would jump to the answer that it is a biological asset because it is an animal. Okay, but please understand that the use of the animals in a zoo class is not to produce agricultural products, nor are they to be grown in for the purposes of their meat and other related products, but simply for display class. The service you offer is for recreation, okay, and therefore even an animal class can be considered as an item of property, plant, and equipment. That's a very important point or concept class. Please remember that.